What's up, mofos? Welcome to another episode of A Taboo Life, where everyone has a story to tell. I'm your host, Drew Franks, or Frank for short. I want to thank you guys again for listening. Come check out the website, ataboolife.com, where you can read some poems, because I am that sappy, listen to other episodes of the podcast, read some really interesting short stories, and some great articles, such as Christmas, MMA, and the Wu-Tang Clan, the fun side of cultural appropriation. And also one of my other favorite articles, In and Out, Lubeck, Getting Drunk for the Mouse, and A Heart Filled with Wanderlust, a wayward wanderer's tips for a road trip across the U.S. All these things are free on the website, ataboolife.com. Check it out. You guys are going to love it. Today's guest is Miss Christine. She is a small business owner with her husband, a mother who homeschooled her children, and her mother was best friends with Mr. Manuel Noriega, the former dictator of Panama. So she talks a little bit about that, her mom's little situation. It was actually kind of funny. And we also talked about politics. She's a conservative woman. There's things I didn't fully agree with her, but I respect her. I respect her thoughts on things. And the whole idea behind this podcast is empathizing with people. Actually just sitting down and listening to a person and trying to understand a person. The reason why I started this podcast is that because you see that in the news and everyday life that we're becoming so infatuated with the idea that I have to be right, or these people have to be wrong, or because these people are different from you, they're freaks, or they're sinners, or wrong. I think if we just take the time and actually sit down and talk to the other person that you have different ideologies about. If you sit down and actually talk to them, and actually get to know them, you could do a lot more good than just condemning people because of their politics or their lifestyle, their skin color, the people they choose to love. What I'm saying is, sometime this week, go find a person that may not fit the normal person you would talk to. Go find them at the bar, buy them a drink, and try to get their story, because you'll be surprised what you will learn from a person if you sit down and just listen to their story. That is my whole goal behind this podcast, is to go get the story of the human spectrum, or not the human spectrum, but the human condition. To go across the whole spectrum and try to get everyone's story, because you'd be surprised what you can learn from a person. So with that, here's Miss Christine, and I hope you guys enjoy it. We're live. Won't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, my name is Christine.
Christine, you are a homeschool mom?
Well, retired homeschool mom. My last graduated last year. She's 19, so I homeschooled all three of my kids for 12 years.
Wow. And also you run a business too.
We do run a business. We custom make everything from laser engraving, embroidery, to fun rhinestone designs for fun mom t-shirts, whatever. We do it all. Full custom.
And it's growing, right?
It is. We're at 1 year next month in October. I love designing. I just love business. I studied business from high school all the way up through college, so this is my thing. I didn't finish college, but it really is in my heart. I love the marketing part, the design especially, coming up with creative designs that nobody else has.
How'd you get started in that?
My husband actually did the research on this. He got hurt in an accident, and he was a contractor. He's retired Navy, and he was a contractor on the base, and somebody hit him on his motorcycle. And while I was out at work and he's home and he can't work and he's bored and he's trying to figure out what are we going to do. And we like to play. We like to travel. Living on Social Security is not going to be. And me being a stay-at-home mom for 20 years wasn't going to make anywhere near what he was making.
Yeah.
So he came up with the idea of, because I have a small bamboo clothing business as well.
What's bamboo clothing?
Oh my gosh, it's made out of bamboo fibers.
Oh,
it's mixed in. Yeah, they actually import it. The company that I was using at the time, unfortunately, they went out of business, so you can only get it from China. But basically, they take bamboo, the fiber, the middle part of it when it's soft, and they take it out, and they mill it with organic cotton or regular cotton. And it feels so incredible, but it's natural. Bamboo grows up to 46 inches a day. So it's totally eco-friendly.
Really?
Yeah, it is. And it has a scent from it that actually detracts insects and bugs, so they don't need any sprays. It's really cool.
Because I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we used to wear gis. Is that the materials made out of, or?
Oh, I don't know.
Because that was pretty strong and tough.
Bamboo
material.
is just like a t-shirt. You would not know the difference.
Oh, okay.
And the towels, believe it or not, you can go to Ollie's and buy the bamboo towels. They always have them on clearance. Super soft. Super, super soft. But you have to be careful. There's 2 ways to process the bamboo. The first way is which happens a lot in China, is they dip it in very deadly chemicals to release the hard part from the fiber, from the soft part.
Okay.
And then there's a more natural where they use live enzymes to separate it. And it's a lot of research, but I found a couple companies that did that, the live enzymes rather than the chemicals. But unfortunately, as time has gone on, there's less and less companies offering the natural part. So what's happening is the prices are going down on bamboo, so you can get a bamboo towel for $5 or $6, but more than likely it's processed with deadly chemicals. So you're buying something thinking, okay, I'm doing a good thing, I'm doing something eco-friendly, but it's actually full of chemicals.
Ooh.
Yes.
And how's because this the shirt I'm wearing is like a that's synthetic wool. Oh no, not a synthetic wool.
Is it polyester?
No, it's antimicrobial.
Right, that's like a polyester.
Okay. So it's
just a process how they do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So get back to because we had that little business and we were in the process of developing the business, I thought, well, since you're hurt, we'll do this. We'll work on this. And he started helping me look for screen printers and people to embroider. And he realized, wow, we can do this ourselves so much cheaper. Yeah. So that's how it all kind of started from there.
So yeah, you started a business because you said your husband got in an accident?
Yes.
Was he in the Navy?
No. He retired in the Navy.
Oh, he retired?
He retired a long time ago. No, he was a contractor at the base.
Oh, okay.
He was in charge of all the barges on the base.
Oh, that's fun.
He would have to go on the barges, make sure his guys were doing the right thing. And because there was no girls working there, so I can say that. And when you're hurt, when he broke his ankle, he wasn't able to put the boots on. So yeah.
Oh, man.
And we're just not going to sit at home and do nothing. We're very outgoing. Let's have some fun type of people. And we like to have nice things.
Nice. Yeah.
So a business was really the only thing that would get us to where we needed to be.
Okay. When we talked last week, you talked about that you were not related, but you knew someone of.
In Panama.
Yeah, Panama, but he was I don't want to say a famous figure, but
no, he's a dictator.
He was
a dictator, yes. My mom is Panamanian, and she grew up her father's side is from the city, and her mother's side is from Chiriquí, which is in David, where David is in Chiriquí, which is up towards the mountains, up closer to about 2-3 hours away from Costa Rica. So it's the northern part of Panama. So in the summertime, my grandmother would send my mother up to spend time with relatives. And she was an only child. Mm-hmm. And she became best friends with a little girl since she was probably about 3 or 4 years old. And later on, she married a guy in the military. And he was a very low, like say, if you know military, would be like a E2 in the Navy. So he was like nothing, like a peon in the military.
Seaman. He was a seaman, basically.
Yeah, it was very low in the military. And that was in the early 60s, because she was probably about 18, 19 and when they got married. And my mom was a maid of honor because they were best friends. And in 74, when I was a baby, I was a few months old, my mom brought my sister and I to Panama to show family. And she said when she got to David, they had the entire floor up top. It was marked off. It was only for them. It was for her friend Muñeca's children, my mom, my sister, and I. And everywhere my mom went with us, she had to have a bodyguard by them. Mm-hmm. Made my mom have a bodyguard and a couple of nannies. So at that point...
It was only when they were together, right? Or
right. No, okay. The whole time my mom was staying there in David, which was probably a few weeks. I don't know exactly how long. But so my mom kind of, at that point, probably started figuring out like there's something going on. And that was in 74, January, February 74. And then in 1980, my dad, who was an intelligence specialist in the Navy.
The U.S. Navy, right?
Yes, the U.S. Navy. Mm-hmm. And he's a very strong conservative, by the way. I'm not going to get into that. But he got an opportunity to go to Panama. And his specialty was actually Russia. Which is I'm not going to get into that one either.
Oh, wait a minute.
Because when you're an intelligence specialist, you study. Sort of like if you're a doctor, you have specialties.
Yeah.
Intelligence specialists do as well. And so he got an opportunity to go to Panama. And of course, my mom being from Panama, said, yes, we got to go to Panama. And so we lived there for 4 years. And it just so happened to be in 81 to 85, which was the heart of where Noriega was getting all his power. So that was very interesting. Like in the first couple of years, we hung out, But I think my mom was just, you'd have to know my mom. She's very she's highly intelligent, but she's kind of innocent with some of her thinking.
Naive a little bit?
Maybe. And remember, she was also best friends with this woman since they were probably 3, 4, 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So she only knew of who her friend was. And not being in Panama from 73 to 81, that's where he got all his power. And in 1981, right when we moved there, July of 81, so around that time, it was right after we got there, is when Torrijos, who was the president, quote unquote, or dictator of Panama at the time, his plane blew up in David. And so we all know that it was Noriega and his people killed Torrijos. Mm-hmm. And everybody knows that. That's nothing new. There's nothing new. But yeah, so there was a lot of interesting things. I mean, I remember as a kid going to their house, but I didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
I was 7, 8 years old, so it didn't really occur to me. But I do remember as I got older, about 9 years old, I was in David. And my mother's family, being in David, loved Muñeca. Because they knew her and her family. And so they kind of accepted Noriega. And even though they had somewhat money of their own, it's always nice when you have a buddy in the government that say, hey, you need a finca or a little farm or, you got little kickbacks, I guess. But they probably didn't really think much about it. So they kind of supported his side. And then my mother's family in the city absolutely hated Noriega and actually helped to fight to get rid of Noriega. Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting. I remember going to Panama. David. It was probably when I was about 9. We were in David visiting my mom, my sister, and I. Lots of times we'd go up to David by ourselves. Yeah. Because my dad worked a lot. And when we went, my mom was talking to her cousin. At this point, this was a few years after we got there. So it was probably about 2 years after we got there. So she was really starting to realize what Noriega and Muñeca were really up to. Yeah. And so she was basically talking to her family about, you can't keep supporting these people. These are really bad people. And of course, she was hearing stuff from my dad as well, because he's like, these aren't good people. And in Panama, if you've ever been to a Latin country, a lot of them, because electricity is so expensive, you have like the air conditioning in the back bedrooms, but as the main house,
yes.
you have all the windows open. And so this gentleman, my sister and I were right outside the door, and this man from the street comes running in, opens the door of my aunt's house, because he overheard my mom talking bad about Noriega. And he was threatening to call the policia to come and take my mom away. That was really like a moment, like, oh my gosh. It was real. That's when I was probably about 9 at that time, so it was still 2 years before we left. So it really had an impact of, oh my gosh, this is really serious stuff. This isn't a joke, But yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And then even interesting, which my mom still doesn't know why, when I was 14, we were back in Massachusetts. My dad was in the Navy, and she was a full-time teacher, and she was going for her master's degree in teaching. So she sent me to Panama in 1988 with my cousin, who's my same age, for a month and a half, which she just still doesn't understand why she sent me to Panama during that time, when my cousin actually was living with us for about a year and a half before that, because it had gotten so bad that whoever had money in Panama, they were actually taking their kids and sending them to the States because it was so bad. So I went to Panama during like a heated time, and my mom's like, "Oh yeah, just go see it." And I stayed with the relatives. My cousin Kathy, she's the same age as me, and so I stayed with her family for a few weeks, and then I went to David. And my cousins in David, they were all big partiers, and I was 14, almost 15, and they were probably like 18, 19 years old. And in Panama, there's certain days of the week where you just party, and then there's other days. I still don't understand. Like, even when I go now, I don't know how people can stay up to 1 a.m. and go to work the next day. Like, I could never do that. So back to the story. When I was 14, so I go up to David, and we're having a house party. And I'm talking to this gentleman, and come to find out he was Noriega's pilot.
Holy shit.
Yeah, because Noriega was still in power at the time. And he was Noriega's pilot. And he was drinking. He was like, oh yeah, because at 14 I was still, would have conversations with people like this. No, nothing crazy or weird. And but yeah, he was like, oh yeah, we go to Colombia. He was telling me all these places they were flying to, but he was the current pilot of Noriega. I think he had like 2, and he was the one that would fly from David and go all over. But he was friends with my mother's family, so my cousins, the crazy partiers, they knew him. And it's kind of sort of like when you have those dictator places, there'll be people that, if you know the government, you're kind of favored and things like that.
Basically, kind of like a celebrity kind of thing.
Yes.
You get invited to the parties.
Yes.
And,
Yep.
You get a little favoritism.
Yep. So they became, and my cousin, she's still crazy. She's almost 50, and she's still, crazy, but she has her own company in Panama, and she was that person that nobody was an enemy. She was friends with everybody she ever met, and if she met you this morning, she was inviting you to a party that afternoon type of thing. So yeah, I got to hang out with Noriega's pilot.
So one thing that I had in my mind for a while about this, I'm not sure if you even know this, did your father ever get interrogated by the CIA or something like that?
I don't know. Because they did background checks without a doubt. Every 3 years, neighbors would come and say, "Oh, they're coming around again." Yeah. So every 2 to 3, maybe 3, 4 years, and like I said, when we lived in Panama, they were scrutinized, and my parents' bank accounts were scrutinized, and every penny. They had property in the United States, and they had to, I remember we've had a lot of conversations about this with my mom, and she remembers having to show every single dime went everywhere, especially, and I'm sure it's probably just the whole atmosphere in Panama at the time, but more so because, her friend Muñeca was trying to buy her Mercedes, wasn't trying to get my parents to live in an apartment, which is Punta Paitilla, which was back then the place to live if you had any type of money. And it's actually right down where that's at. That's the smelliest of the city. So I never knew why that was the most famous wealthy area. It's all the sea, the dead fish, that smell twice a day. Yeah, it's really nasty. But so they were, I'm sure, scrutinized, and he had to do all that stuff. But he was an intelligence specialist. He had nothing to hide, so there wasn't any issues. And my mom was just innocently friends with somebody from childhood. It wasn't that she was getting anything. It was made clear to my mom, and I do remember that from the time we got there, was don't even let her buy you lunch type of thing. It was like very,
it was that bad.
Yeah.
Because and anything will look like a favor.
Think of a friend that you grew up with, and they end up marrying somebody that has some things that you don't really know, but they may or may not, because people are telling you some things are going on, but you don't know yourself. Like your friend is telling you, oh no, my wife or my husband is amazing. They're a great spouse. You're going to believe your friend until proof comes out. Then as time went on, I'm talking like 81 to 82, but once after being there a year or two, that's when I remember my mom really seeing things from not only my dad, but also just from her cousins.
Yeah. Also love will also blind you in a way too.
Yes.
Like she might fall in love with a part of him that was a good part, and she might have just been blind or just in denial.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's man, that's a strange.
It's pretty cool.
But
I was telling my mom she has to write a book, and she's like, "Oh no," but she knows I talk about it.
Yeah,
but I don't talk about it to brag. I literally talk about it in order to, we in life, you never know who you're going to touch. You might tell your story today, and it's not to brag, it's not to get sympathy.
Just to tell a story.
It's just because there's somebody listening, and your story is going to help somebody else somewhere. I mean, I've had many people come to me after I tell a story of something, and they're like, that really helped me, that, really resonated with me. So we just never know. And you be open with yourself. And a lot of people, I come from my father's family and my mother's family both have money. And they have that very old school mentality of everything's private. You don't talk about anything. But and my sister's kind of that way. But I don't care. I talk about everything. And I've helped a lot of women, and a lot of women have helped me because I listen as well. I don't just talk. When somebody is telling their story about something that they've gone through in their life, I also listen. And that's what we have to do. And that's not enough. We're not doing that enough in life.
No, it's a good thing you brought that up, because that's one of the reasons why I started a podcast. One is kind of like you see what's going on with the atmosphere in America, and I know we're going to stay away from the politics, but I'm just saying that in general.
Right.
But also too, like my time traveling, working as a cop and other jobs, I kind of saw how important people's stories are, and and a lot of people have good stories, and this should be told. And I really believe in the whole empathy, how you could really disagree with a person, and there's some people like you can't just communicate with, like Noriega or Hitler or something like that.
Yeah.
There's some people like it's hard to empathize with them, but a lot of people in the world today, they're gonna have different mindsets. They're gonna live their lives the way they want to live it. But you can always relate to them. You can always accept them for who they are. It's like, it's not like they're bothering you or hurting you anyway. Just listen to their story. There's
so many different people, but we all do have, what's that? 3 steps of separation. Is that what it is?
The Kevin Bacon thing?
The
5. Well, what's Kevin Bacon?
5 steps, whatever it is.
6 degrees of separation.
And it really is like, when I lived in Virginia Beach, there was a Navy SEAL. There was a Navy SEAL in my neighborhood, and his son and I were friends in high school. Come to find out, his father was the head of his SEAL team and was actually one of the first SEALs into Noriega's house at the time when they invaded in 1989. And, it's like, okay, well, that's pretty cool.
Well, the thing is, the Navy, the Navy is like a kind of like a small population if you want to think about it, compared to America.
Yeah.
So it's like it's probably be less degrees. Yeah. What the odds are you all find
into a neighborhood?
It's like, oh yeah, my mom's best friend is his wife.
Exactly. I mean, you really, honestly, we do. I mean,
especially a Navy SEAL too. Like, oh, how often do you actually live right next to a Navy SEAL?
Right. Exactly. Well, in the neighborhood that we did, there was quite a few actually.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Navy, retired.
Well, there was a lot of not necessarily retired, but the neighborhood that we lived in was. The military gets a lot of money for housing, whether people believe it or not.
Oh, good. I'll say, I think they deserve it. It's like
they absolutely do. Listen, I'm a daughter of a Navy guy, of a retired Navy. My father-in-law fought in World War II and Korean War. My husband served 22 years in the Navy. Believe me, I am so pro police, fire. I always say, you don't take money away, or you don't suppress the people that are protecting your ass.
Yeah.
I say that.
You could curse. Yeah, it's okay. You can curse.
I do tend to curse a lot.
That's okay.
But
you
that's
can
a
curse.
sign of intelligence, what they say.
No, actually, I keep reading articles about that. I remember reading articles about that back in college when I was a psychology major. That's how far as I went. It was a bachelor's degree. But I remember doing a report on that. There's a high degree of intelligence with someone cursing, and the whole not the adage, but the whole myth behind it is like when a person curses, that means they don't have a massive vocabulary usage, but it turned out like no, they actually more higher intelligence and more likely express emotions a lot better.
Yes. Well, and that brings us to homeschooling. I started homeschooling because I'm basically the type of person, if you can't tell by now, that I kind of do things. I'm not going to listen to other people. And I had my now 23-year-old. He was struggling in preschool. And he went to a private preschool here at the beach, and he was struggling.
So you guys been here your whole...
23 years.
Oh, wow.
I moved here when I was 5 months pregnant with my oldest child.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got stationed down here, and then we ended up staying. And
that's surprising for a Navy family. Like, oh, well, we'll stay here.
Well, what happened was my husband, the guy that I was married to, I had 2 children, but he left. Mm-hmm. And it was such a blessing. At the time, it was hurtful.
Yeah.
And I was about to go back to Virginia Beach. And while I was he was making me stay here because I was pregnant with my second child, because he didn't want me, but he wanted to be able to, I guess, keep tabs on me type of thing. And in Florida, if you're pregnant, the person can basically say no, or not pregnant, and you're going through a custody battle, they can basically tell you, no, you can't leave the state until everything's finalized. And so when I was pregnant, I had to stay here with my 1-year-old child, and my parents thankfully had the means to fly down every couple of weeks, and one of them would stay with me for a couple of weeks, and they would go back. And
that's nice.
Yeah, I had a lot of support with my family. And so during that time, while I was waiting for the divorce to finalize, which was about 8 months, and I met my husband, my now 21-year husband, and he ended up adopting my boys, and he's dad, but he had a child. He has 2 children from previous marriage, and at the time his son.
Oh, it was a big family.
He did, he had custody of his then 16-year-old son when we met. Mm-hmm. And so his son was in high school at Fletcher High School, and he wrestled and he played football.
Oh, okay.
So when when we got together and then we fell in love and got married, for him it made sense to stay here until his son graduated. Well, at the time, we didn't know where he was working. He ended up felt comfortable there. He ended up staying there 15 years. So even though his son left and moved away, we ended up just staying here. And I love the beaches. I don't cross the bridge if I don't have to. I do not cross the ditch if I don't have to.
Actually, yeah, this part of Jacksonville is really nice. Yeah. Like, even like if you don't have... you're saying not living like in nicer neighborhoods of like Atlantic or Neptune Beach, even in just a general population neighborhoods, those are actually still nice.
It's just something about the beaches community. It really is. We have some crazy political conversations on the Atlantic Beach page, and there's some crazy people in Jack's Beach. I mean, sometimes it's usually the other people from the other side of the bridge.
I'm not sure if I heard this in the news right, but because all the shootings and stuff that happened at Jack's Beach.
Yeah, we've had a lot.
Did they put the curfew in effect, or do you know anything about that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm in bed by 9 o'clock at night, so I don't know.
I like to, once in a while I like to go out, but I don't want to stop drinking at 12.
Yeah.
It's like I'm still young enough to do that.
There is some debate about that. I honestly, I'm not a drinker.
Well, I heard
I
they put that in effect for some reason, but
Yeah.
I gotta look into that.
Yeah. So back to the homeschooling. So we were, so my son was struggling with disability, and when I was growing up, I knew this stuff, but I couldn't figure out.
May I ask what disability it was?
It's actually called a processing delay, and basically your brain, the information goes to your long-term memory before it goes to the short-term memory. Is the easiest way to describe it. And those are any type of like dyslexia or any of that. The intelligence, the IQ is much higher.
Yeah,
for kids with learning disabilities.
A lot of CEOs have dyslexia.
No, absolutely, it really is, because your brain, what you were saying earlier, where you just kind of all over the place. You really are thinking in a very different way. So swearing, it's not that you can't think of an appropriate word. It's that your brain is literally going. Like when I'm talking, I'm already thinking 20 steps ahead. And my son was like that. And so they went to a teacher, and they actually, basically told me and my son that he was
one second.
ADHD.
Can you put the mic just a little bit closer to you?
Sorry.
Oh, you just bring it back towards you. There we go. That's a lot better.
His teacher in preschool basically sat me down and said that she believed he had ADHD, which I did not believe in.
Overdiagnosed.
And was basically telling me that if I didn't get him on some sort of medication at 5 years old, I was going to be burying him at 13 from suicide. Yes.
Who said that?
A teacher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was a speech therapist teacher, because he had a lot of ear infections, and he was going to a military doctor. Military doctor didn't see his ear infections. He had a lot of at the time, this is modern day, when I see people, my friends with little kids, it's just amazing how different they think. Back in the mid to the late 90s, if a kid had to have so many ear infections a year to qualify for tubes in their ears. Now you have like 2 or 3, you're good, where he wouldn't have a lot, but they just were continuous. So it affected his hearing, so he had speech therapy at 4 and 5 years old. And so this teacher told me this. So being a strong mom and not putting up with it, and of course I immediately called my mom, and she's a teacher, and one of her good friends in the Virginia Beach public school system not only was a child psychologist at the school system, but also married to an attorney. So they went and got the paper how the school was illegally testing my son for ADHD and threatening basically to take him out of the school until I put him on medication. So they were such a blessing.
When was this? The 90s?
Yeah, this would have been 99.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Somewhat recent.
2000, yes. But from 2000 to now, it's so different. And they were really just throwing, and both my sister-in-laws at the time were actually drug reps for big pharmaceutical companies. I'm not going to say which ones. And both of them said, if you can do it, go to a psychologist, pay cash, do not do it through insurance, because they get kickbacks just for prescribing. That's why you have so many kids nowadays just getting prescribed all these medications. And so I said, absolutely, with my mom's friends and my sister-in-laws and all that advice. So we went and hired a psychiatrist to do all this testing. And he couldn't believe that the teacher he was in preschool kindergarten, actually wrote in his file that he was incapable of learning. But when he was tested at over a 140 IQ.
Ooh.
And this is a young age, yes. He was well above average. And that's when and I'm a researcher. If you tell me something, I'm not going to automatically believe you. If I feel like I use my brain, does that really make sense? But I will research. And I did a lot of research and come to find out that it's just the way you process. I come to find out that's how I am. I definitely process things very, if I'm sitting here, my brain is going. it's better for me to have 20 things I have to get done in a short period of time than it is for me to do 5,000 things one thing in like a 2-month period. And a lot of people say, oh, you're ADHD. Mm-hmm. No, I don't. ADHD has been thrown around a lot. And the problem with throwing that around, you're putting chemicals into your body that you don't necessarily... There are people with a different chemical makeup in their brain. Absolutely. But you have to really go for neurological testing and all types of testing. A psychiatrist to say, okay, your kid, needs to be on all these drugs at charging $2,000 a month to the insurance. Here's my prescription. Don't worry, the insurance covers 100% of it. You don't know what effects you're doing to that child at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Mm-hmm. If you're not going further with that and making sure that your child is truly diagnosed. I'm not saying ADHD does not exist. What I'm saying is if your child is struggling, they mistook my son's learning disability that he was ADHD. And if I would have just taken the advice of the teacher, supposedly even the principal sat me down in the school.
Yeah, but they're not trained to actually make diagnosis like that.
But they were doing that. Very common in the 90s and early 2000. That was a very common occurrence. And when my boys were before we started homeschooling, they went to public school, then private school, and then they went to a Montessori school, like a magnet school. And during that time, they, played sports and, were Cub Scouts. And almost every kid on the teams, in the groups, were on some sort of ADHD medication. It was common, but as my sister-in-law has told me, they get kickbacks every time you go to the doctor, whether it's for penicillin or strep throat, whatever it may be. That's why so many doctors, you can go for a headache and they're prescribing you medication. You can go get something over the counter. They want you to go put that into the pharmacy because the second it goes into the pharmacy, it immediately goes to the pharmaceutical company and to the doctor that you prescribed it. And guess what happens? That pharmaceutical company will now kick back. My sister-in-law might kill her money. Get a car, unlimited mileage, get a new car every 2 years. And they're getting $50,000 to $100,000 in bonuses by selling these drugs to doctors, bringing doctors out to free lunches once or twice a week. Why? Because these doctors are getting free meals. Matter of fact, one year we used to go up for Thanksgiving all the time when the kids were younger. And one year, several years ago, my sister-in-law was telling me that one of the doctor's offices called her company not to allow her to come back because for no other reason, because she's a really nice person, no other reason was because she had not provided a free lunch in over 2 months. And they said, if she's not going to provide lunch, and that's how these doctors are. No offense to doctors, but I'm sorry, there are a lot of doctors out there that are like that.
Yeah, but it's sad it's like that. It's not all of them, but...
No, it's not. But for example, for me, I was 100 pounds until I was 36. I had 3 kids. Mm-hmm. I was in a size 1 that, like a week later, I ate everything I wanted and never gained an ounce. And when I was 36, I'm 44 now. I'll be 45 next week.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I started gaining all this weight. And I said, what is going on? Well, being at a homeschooling group, there was a lot of crunchy or granola moms. Mm-hmm. They would get off gluten. And they would lose all this weight. I'm like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get off gluten. Well, as I got off gluten, I didn't lose much weight, but I felt better. And I would feel more energy and things. So as time went on, I go to the base doctor. And I kept insisting for my doctor to give me a simple blood test, allergy test. She refused for 4 years. Last spring, I thought I was having a heart attack. No, in 2017. Thought I was having a heart attack. They send me to the cardiologist to make sure my heart's... He looks at me and says, you're not having any heart issues. You're allergic to gluten. I said, how do you know that? He said, I can see it by your face. I said, what? He said, no, I've been studying about this. And he sent a letter. He realized in my file that all the requests for the allergy test for gluten was never followed through. Like she would get requests.
And this is the Navy doctor, right?
Navy doctor. She would get requests from other doctors that I had been going to. Imagine all the thousands of dollars that the TRICARE, the military insurance, was paying out to civilian doctors for me for over 4 years for blood pressure medication, all that. And that's when I started really researching about holistic healing and things so different. So different. I have a lot of ways to go because gluten is in shampoo. They're in toothpaste and mouthwash. You name it, it's in it. Yes, because it's a thickener. Like you make a roux with flour, that's what they do.
Oh, it makes sense for bread and stuff, but I didn't.
No, shampoo, conditioners, makeup. Most makeup is not gluten-free. So if you put eyelash liner, any of that, it's touching you.
And with that doctor, did he actually do the blood test?
No, she finally did. I finally threatened a lawsuit. I'm kind of a mean person when I want to be. And she finally did the test last September 2017.
And came back.
And she never called me for over a month. I called her and said, I want an appointment now. And I said, where's the results? And she said, oh, no, I don't think you're allergic to it. Let's because they had put me on 4 different high blood pressure medications. Could not stable out. And you have to exercise more. That's what I kept hearing for years. You have to exercise more. You're not eating healthy. Like, I went to nutritionists, wrote down everything I had, and still I was not losing the weight. My blood pressure was getting worse and worse and worse. And so that's when she finally said, okay, let me go look. She goes to her office, comes back, she said, oh, you are allergic to it. I will never forget that expression. And I looked at her and said, yes, I guess I'm not as dumb as you think, huh? But I did. I mean, and you have to really outweigh. There's so many chemicals in the ground, especially having the bamboo business. You really do start to research. I do not believe in global warming. I know that's controversial, but I don't. There's a lot of things that affect us. Absolutely. Is there a overwhelming amount? No. If you look back at the history from over 200-300 years ago, you look at the history of the weather and everything else. These are patterns that have been going on for centuries in our world. This is nothing new. But I do agree that we have to do something to better our future. I love my kids. And because I love my kids and I'm going to love my future grandkids, I want to make sure that they live in a world where they can go to the ocean. That's our favorite thing to do. Go swimming, go scuba diving, snorkeling. If the world is not clean, but one thing that, not to get into politics, but that all the world is beating up America about the cleanliness of the ocean. The problem is we can do whatever we want here in the U.S. to clean up, but until all the other countries do their part, that ocean goes all over the world. It does not, that little speck of water does not stay just in Costa Rica or just in the Philippines. If they're throwing garbage in the Philippines, it's going to eventually come to this side of the world, whether we like it or not. So until those other countries, and I remember a few years ago, there was a big controversy about, U.S. was, basically causing the world global warming. My dad was traveling back and forth to China at the time for business because he has his own company. Mm-hmm. And he would send pictures of what it looks like up above the clouds and when you're flying into China. And it's absolutely disgusting. Like it's so black you can't even see it. It's disgusting. And until that's fixed, it's going to continuously affect us. If you remember a few years ago, I can't remember exactly when, what was that mountain that erupted, and we were getting ashes in Europe.
Greenland, right?
Yeah, it was somewhere in Europe. I don't remember exactly where.
It was Iceland. It was Iceland.
You're correct. It was Iceland. We had ashes on our cars here in Jacksonville. In little Jacksonville, we had ashes on our car from it. Oh, yeah,
that's right. I remember because I was living here at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. That was when it's like a couple months after I graduated college. I was working as a temp, and there was ashes on my car. I remember that.
It sure was. And I thought, gosh, that shows the wind, the rain, the ocean, it goes all over
also,
the place.
too, if I remember this correctly, that might not have been from the volcano. We were also having the fires.
No. There was
like in Georgia and stuff.
No, not the same time. The ashes from that was actually it was hitting the United States at the same time. It's crazy. Yeah, we have a lot of fires too. But we
haven't had that many fires lately, but I remember a couple of years ago, we had a few of them. It was the droughts. We had a lot of droughts in Georgia. Got on fire, the Okefenokee swamp area, and came down to Florida.
It's every few years. We'll have a dry spell. Like this year, we've had a lot of rain. They thought we were going to have a dry spell, but we ended up getting enough rain. So thankfully, because that's really hard. I was pregnant with my daughter the first time we experienced. It was in '99. The first time I experienced the heavy smoke, and I remember my two boys were very little, and I was pregnant, and we couldn't go outside for like 2 weeks because it was so bad. But yeah, so that's pretty much.
Your rant.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what you said about your son, because it kind of reminded me.
Oh yeah, so my son. So
because I want to make a point about that.
Yeah.
Because I was held back in kindergarten for a speech impairment, and it kind of like bothered me for years. But kind of now looking back at it, I'm thinking like, was it needed or was it something else? Then also too, what you said about the what your son has with the processing information, and also connect that to what you said about telling a story and that somebody might help someone. I remember my uncle used to make fun of me because he said like I had like a gap. Every time someone would say something to me, I would actually think, and it took me like 10 or 20 seconds to actually say something back. It's like he would think like I was like what you said, processing too much information. It's like, well, here's the information for Frank and nothing, and oh hey, here's the answer. But I remember just like always thinking about other things that were just abstract.
Yeah.
Then he would ask me a question. I actually really seriously think about what he said and come back. But I don't know, it's weird.
Because he was ignorant, and not that he's bad, but ignorant means not knowing.
Yeah, not knowing.
And it's not, I mean, a lot of people think saying ignorant is a derogatory word, but it's really not. It's the definition of it is not knowing. So when you don't know something, and some people cope with making fun of because maybe somebody made fun of him and something that he was lacking when he was a kid. But the reality is, you have to be a strong parent. The school systems make a lot of money from federal government having these special classes, whether you're in a gifted program or you're in a disability program. Well, what they call, I don't like saying disability because Einstein would have been considered ADHD with disabilities, and he wouldn't have accomplished what he had if he lived in today's world.
And also, too, how the school structure was set up. I remember watching this documentary I forgot the name of the documentary, about the education system, and looked at all such the issue. But one of the main problems was that the system is not set up for individuals or people like with individual mindsets. No, it's set up I think it was back. Somebody actually corrected me because I thought they did this around World War II, but somebody told me it was actually the start back in World War I, where it was set up where it was basically kind of like a factory for the workforce. You're either a soldier, factory worker, or a secretary.
Yes,
if you're a woman,
and that is true.
And it hasn't changed.
And
really.
That was also depending on where your economic family, where your family was in the economic realm of things, because they wanted to make sure that everybody had the basic knowledge in order to develop, because this was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Everything was about manufacturing and the big boom of making money, and they needed people to have the basic knowledge of how to use a machine in order to create these products to sell around the world. And this is where they came up with the whole public school system. They had little schools here and there, but in the poor communities throughout our country, they had like a little schoolhouse that maybe one of the moms would teach at, but they didn't have official teachers and the school system like they do nowadays. And that's when the federal government stepped in and did all that. So when I was going through that with my son, I was remembering all the struggles that I had. I would have the hardest time throughout the school year and then pass the end of the year tests with flying colors. And I remember as a teenager, my dad would talk to me like, they called me in because you passed this, but they want to keep you. I mean, they never kept me back in high school, but they wanted to because they were saying, well, she's not getting all her work done correctly. Well, does it matter of what I remember today, or does it matter what I remember tomorrow? And I taught my kids, and that's where the homeschooling community has become so popular in the last 20 years. And even from when we started in 2005 here in Jacksonville, the amount of resources that the homeschooling community now has through Duval County is absolutely amazing.
Explain that more, because I told you on the phone, I had a girlfriend that she was homeschooled. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because one of the questions I had is like, how do you socialize? Because one of the biggest things you need as a child is like you need to socialize with other kids.
I love that. Actually, thank you. My late father-in-law, very nice, but that was his biggest concern. Like, and of course, my mom being a public school teacher, her entire adult life was like, you don't have your teaching degree. You can't do this. But I said, I don't care. I'm going to do it no matter what. I'm pretty strong in that way. But that was one of my late father-in-law's biggest concerns. Like, oh my gosh, you're not going to. Okay. I'm not a sit-at-home type of person. If you can go to any public school and you will find kids that literally go from school to their house and don't talk to anybody until the next morning.
Yeah, might be because
it's
different reasons for that.
For different reasons, but it's parenting. It's how the parents are socializing, the parents are treating their kids, etc. So it doesn't matter if
you're... They're introverts too. That might
introverts. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, well, for us, we were everywhere. Mm-hmm. My husband used to joke around like, you're not even really home. How are you homeschooling? And I remember go to the grocery store and people would look at us like, aren't you supposed to be at home teaching your kids? Mm-hmm. Well, that's the problem with our society. There is more than to know, like this common core math. I'm not an expert at math, but refreshing everything, homeschooling, I look at it and I think, gosh, what are they doing to these poor kids? Because somebody had their money, was able to pay somebody in the government to get all these new books made. And what happened? These kids are so more confused today about math than they were 5 years ago. They have no clue what's going on.
I remember Texas was the biggest, some company in Texas was the biggest one doing that, right?
Yeah. And somebody has their hand in the cookie jar. And anytime you look at government, it's always somebody... The reason why somebody get a contract because they knew somebody and somebody liked that idea and somebody got some money in their pocket.
Yeah, I remember.
That's the reality of it.
I remember reading about because I like Elon Musk. I like what he's doing, but I remember reading why space flight is so expensive, and one of the reasons why is that whole cookie jar thing. Mm-hmm. It's like they have these contracts with these companies that build the parts and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. NASA can't really negotiate because of that.
Right.
And they can't okay, well, we have another company over here that twice the quality, half the price.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you have to go to this company over here in Alabama or Texas where maybe just average quality, twice the price.
Yep.
And
it's because somebody got a contract and they promised somebody something to give them the idea that they were going to do a better job. And that's the biggest problem we have to have. And that's why, in business, it's competition. You let the customers decide who's going to win in the business world and who's not. If the public says, you know what, I like this product better, they're going to go buy that product. If they say, no, I don't like this product, but the problem, like in the school systems, and any type of government contracts, that's their first thing is, do you have a permission to sell with us? In the government, it's very difficult. You have to have a Duns and Bradshaw license. And of course, they want the membership, which is $3,000 a year. If you're a small business and you're starting out, $3,000 a year for a membership to try to get a government contract is like saying they need $1 million. $3,000 is a lot. Unless you have some investors or you have a big pot of money. The average entrepreneur, small business in America has only $10,000, $15,000, and a lot of it, most of the time, is
recycled back into business.
Well, recycled or borrowed from the bank. Mm-hmm. So there's very limited funds. So it's a lot of money. So when you when you have all that, that's the tough part. So when you have this, so the school systems for my kids, we had an amazing homeschooling group when they were younger. Arlington Explorers, the leader, her and I, we butted heads. We were both very strong personalities. But in the end of the day, I always told her, listen, we might not be compatible, but let me tell you, you do an amazing job as a homeschool leader. If there was a field trip to go to a candy making Sweet Pete's when they first opened, or go to the recycling center, or going to Timuquana Preserve, whatever it was, we were there. That homeschooling group knew about it. We had weeks in advance, and she would push as many activities that were free or very, very, very cheap. Because a lot of the homeschooling families, you're talking one-income families. And so you have families that have unlimited funds and they live in Queens Harbor, and then you have others that have 8 kids and they're struggling. And many, especially after 2008, that was a big reality check for me. When, you see a lot of these moms.
That's a big reality check for everyone.
It was a big, but you saw a lot of these moms that had to go back to work, and it broke their heart because a lot of these moms were literally homeschooling since their children were 2 years old, 3 years old. And to have to swallow their pride and put their kids into the public school system so that they can go back to work to help their family, that was a huge, wake-up call. Yeah. But it really made me appreciate that I was still able to homeschool the kids. And even though I worked a very small part-time job, but that was the
But going back to what I asked earlier, because we kind of went on.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. We go on the whole episode, these episodes, we go on rabbit holes sometime.
I do too. That's like me. I do that.
But going back, what did you do? Help them play with other kids and stuff? Did those programs and stuff?
From the time they were 4 years old, they were in soccer. The boys were in baseball.
Oh, okay, good.
My daughter cheerlead, so she cheered for Jack's Beach Pop Warner for up until she was 10. Until she got to 7th grade. And then in 7th grade, she made the Mayport Middle cheerleading team. And 7th, 8th grade, and then she was varsity her 9th year. Her first time in high school, she made varsity, which is a big deal. And so they were in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We were in 4-H. We had the homeschooling group at the time, before 2008. They were very involved with, twice a month, we had science classes, photography classes, where there was 100 other kids there. And because we did other stuff outside the homeschool, a lot of families, they choose for religious reasons, they only want their kids to hang out with homeschooling kids in similar circumstances. I respect that, because nowadays you have so many kids that your kids are being exposed to that you don't necessarily want to be exposed at 4 and 5 and 6 years old.
And such as what? Because I'm not a parent, so.
Well, one thing, when my middle son, he was at one of the elementary schools here, I won't say which one, for kindergarten, before I pulled him out and put him into a magnet school. There was 2 kids that were they were clearly not taken care of at home. And they either had some sort of lice, they always had ringworm, and my poor son, thank God no lice, but he came home with ringworm, and we'd treat it, and then these kids would be covered from head to toe in ringworm again because their family wasn't taking care of them. And I would remember having conversations with a kindergarten teacher, do we not need to call DCF? I mean, this is, and the public school system, I don't know how it is now because it's been a long time since my kids were in there, but back then they were so worried about being politically correct. We're a public school, everybody's supposed to be here. Well, that's great, but I'm a mom. I don't want to have to keep scrubbing my house down for 10 hours every other week because somebody else's kid is coming here with lice. And, whether you're a public school or not, yes, you're going to go to the playground and meet with other kids. But if you're having such a constant issue in one classroom, you need to take different measures. And the school teacher, unfortunately, the school didn't feel they needed to. And so that was a kind of deciding factor. Plus, my middle son is very outside-the-box thinker like me, and so he was struggling, and we had him tested as well. He was way up there with his IQ as well, and that's when we brought him to the Montessori school. And he did very well for first grade in the Montessori school. And he really liked it. And then just circumstances happened for second grade that we decided, you know what, it was a grace of God, actually. I was in a program called MOPS. Mothers of Preschoolers. Basically, if you have a kid or children under the age of kindergarten, and from newborn to kindergarten, there's a great Christian program. A lot of the churches nowadays, there's a lot more, but at the time there was like the Base, and there was Neptune Baptist Church had one, and there was a couple other places. And it's a great experience for moms. They go in there, they have daycare, free daycare. The moms go and put the kids in the daycare, or they carry the babies, and they get to socialize. This is twice a month. They get to do arts and crafts. There's always a speaker. I remember when I used to go, there would be at least one or two speakers on school, because you have your moms up until kindergarten. So a lot of these moms, they have no clue. Mm-hmm. What do I do? How do I get my kid into school? So they would have speakers and being women entrepreneurs and bringing in, having business. So there was, by grace of God, I was really struggling. Like, what do I need to do? And a lady came to speak. She was one of the lead homeschooling ladies here in Jacksonville for Duval County. She was a homeschool mom, but she worked with Harry, which is the homeschool organization for Duval County. Mm-hmm. And they're amazing. They have a free library. You can rent out books. I mean, it's just amazing. And so she came, talked, and so I went and just asked her a few questions. And I just prayed about it, and I thought, I'm going to try this for about 5 months. If I don't like it, I'll send them back to school. And it really ended up being nice. I mean, they have amazing programs. We went to the Nutcracker. I mean, a lot of things that we were able to do during the day, a lot of kids can't do. How many times does the public school system, honestly, do these young kids go to a field trip nowadays? One of my kids went to Beach's Episcopal School, which is a private school. Mm-hmm. They went once a month on a field trip. But the public schools, they don't have it in their budget, even though the parents have to pay $10 or $15 every time they go. Either it's not in their budget, or the parents complain because I don't have $10, $15 every other month. So they really knocked it. By the time my oldest, before I homeschooled one, tried it out a year. Mm. And I homeschooled another. By the third year, I had all three of them home. By the time my oldest was coming home, he was at a public school, and they were doing field trips once a year.
At a public school.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know how it is now, because this is, almost 20 years ago. But, excuse me, how can kids learn if they're in the same classroom looking at the same books on a daily basis? So socialism, you go to the grocery store with a little kid. Okay, well, they're 3 years old. They want to grab stuff. Okay, well, can you find me these crackers? And they'll find the crackers. And then as they get older, okay, get your calculator out and help calculate, because we have a $100 budget.
Oh, yeah.
And those
do you
are
make
all
them
the
do
things.
The taxes too?
Well, yeah.
You make them
yeah, because I started the clothing business when they were in middle school and high school, so I actually did have them help me do that. Not all the time, but, I would try. Oh, Mom, I said, I would have loved to have a mom that
here's your homework.
Really, you do. But homeschooling, that's the great thing about it, is that you literally can make your child's education form to how they learn the best. And my kids, there are subjects that they are super fast and just come natural. And there are other subjects that they need more time. And when you homeschool, the curriculum that you buy for homeschooling, it's great, because if they have issues with math, it's a lot of repetitive in the homeschooling community. A lot of repetition. And in the public schools, they have a deadline, because the federal government is giving so much per month to that school for each kid. If you do not pass that milestone by this month, they take some of that money away. Mm-hmm. And that's wrong. And when you have all that combined, it makes it difficult. This is why these teachers are so focused on learning for the FCATs that they don't teach anything.
I remember when I took the FCATs. Now, even thinking about it now, it's like, what is the point? Like, from my standpoint, like, how did this help me as a 31-year-old man? Like, it did not at all.
It didn't.
If anything, it stressed us out, and it was like, okay, is this going to help? At the time, I thought, like, do we need this for college? Do I need this to get into college? And it was just added stress on children. Like, yeah, we don't need to study for this. Like, we got, SATs, we got to take the ACT.
And yet they don't study history.
Yeah.
History is so, in our world, and we're not going to talk about politics, but in our world right now, history is vital. If you do not know your history, it will repeat itself. And if you are not educated on what happened 100 years ago, why things happened, what steps were taken by whoever it may have been.
Oh, hold on one sec. Just for anyone that's listening who doesn't know what the FCAT is, it's the standardized test that most states have to do for the federal budget. I believe, the federal budget. So that's what it's called for Florida, the FCAT. So that's what it is. Just a standardized test that we all had to take that made no bearing for the student at all, or as an adult or as a child.
No.
But just for money from the federal government.
No, absolutely.
Okay, go back to what you're saying.
Yeah, and so when you have no knowledge of history, you don't. Now, Dave Ramsey, I told you that I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan. Dave Ramsey teaches you. Yeah, look it up. He teaches you how to be completely debt free. And except for my kids, we bought the homeschooling version to teach kids how to manage money, but he has an app called Every Dollar. And you go and put all your information in there, and say for gas, you have $100 a month budget for gas, is what you set your $100 budget a month for gas. Now, if you spend 101, it turns red. It shows you don't spend anymore. So then you adjust your budget, but it really, after you start using it after a couple months, it really makes you think, okay, well, why am I spending $200 a month on coffee going out in town? I can buy a $200 machine and make my own coffee at home the same way. There's things like that it really helps. But Dave Ramsey, he now has a program in a lot of the high schools throughout the country, and now they're getting into the middle schools.
It should be taught at a young age, because I remember one of my best friends, his uncle, genius guy, he went to Villanova. I think he has he doesn't have any master or doctorate degrees, but he has 2 degrees, and he does tax consulting for big corporations. He made his children keep ledgers at a young age, where their allowance and stuff. He's like, all right, well, he's like, Dad, can I have $20 for my allowance? It's like, yeah, go get the ledger. It was like an actual, paper ledger. Yeah. It's like, all right, you need to go fill this in. You need to do the math on it. So he made his children do that. And I would, one of my parents didn't really taught us that. And plus the school system, that's kind of one of the big, kind of debates what's going on, is why we even because like I said, thinking about the FCAT, when I took it, it's like, why are we learning this when we should have been learning about how to do our taxes, how to do budgeting, what state laws are really important to us, how to actually consume and process certain types of information like news and stuff like that, how to be more critical thinking instead of just all right, memorize this, take the test. Yeah.
You have to. Yeah. And even though I don't want to talk about politics today, because especially today it can be really
I feel like this is topics that it's kind of on both sides that everyone could agree on.
You really do have to know your political science. And I think political science, I was fortunate because I had such a strong dad that was in politics. My mom didn't care anything about politics, but my dad was, from a young age, I remember him, politics. It really resonated with me. And in high school, I chose classes, specifically political science, world history, things like that. And I really love history. That's my most favorite thing besides finance and political science. And so as a teenager, I remember, thinking, gosh, they're really not teaching us much. I voted for my first election when I was 18 years old in 1992. That was a huge deal for me. And I know so many people, my kids, because they have a mom who's always talking about it, and we study, no matter what we were studying that year, finance and political science every single year since they were in elementary school. From the time I started homeschooling, people were like, you're teaching them that? Yes, it's important. Because in school systems, who's running the school systems is going to decide for the next 5 to 10 years on how the school is going to teach your child. And if you have a child that's a year old, 2 years old, that's going to mold their learning until they're in middle school. Middle school, if you don't catch things when they're little, and by the time you catch it in middle school, you can teach them, you reteach them things, but it becomes more difficult. They get things stuck in their head and it just kind of stays.
Yeah.
Whereas you have to battle that when they're younger. And same like with the Dave Ramsey, my kids, they were homeschooled, they graduated with real high school diplomas. They played sports they were wrestlers, swim team, cheerleading, golf. They played golf as well in high school. And because of Tim Tebow, I was Tim Tebow, but it was his mom and it was several other parents.
Was he homeschooled?
He sure was. And that was the big controversy because his parents bought or rented an apartment for him to go to a certain school, and there was a big controversy.
Oh, that bullshit, like the whole favoritism to a certain school.
Who cares? They do it all the time. Fletcher had a quarterback. His dad owned some big medical company here in Jacksonville, and they moved into the beach just so his son could play here. So it happens all the time.
Yeah, well, my thing is like, why the hell are you getting on the parents about that? Or the school's like, okay, we have a moneymaker here. But then when you get to the college level, basically it's kind of like, I don't want to say slave labor, but basically they're not getting paid for the work they're doing. Right. Yeah, they are getting free education, but I feel like that's not enough because the schools are making a lot more money off of it.
Right. Well, when they have a win, mm-hmm. they get sponsors. It also brings in more kids into the school system, mm-hmm. or not into the school system, but into the school. Because the reality is, the majority of parents, if they're financially able, they buy a house according to the school system. Yeah. And in Jacksonville, we're all one school system, but there are definitely some schools that are better than others.
Yeah, because I remember where I lived at when I was about to go in high school, I was supposed to go to Wolfson, and I had an aunt who, I'm not going to tell her what high school, but she was a principal. Yeah, she was a principal at one of the high schools, or middle school. Anyway, she was a principal, and she had pool, and she's like, no, you're not going to Wolfson. You guys are going to Mandarin. And we went to Mandarin the whole 4 years. But the thing is, we were also at the cusp, too, of that borderline. But also bringing that up, it's really bad that we're in America, and you have to be like that. Like, oh, well, we have to move in this area, because if one block north, then we go to Sandalwood. Yeah. Or one block west, we go to Wolfson.
Yeah. Well, it's more Jacksonville, because mm-hmm. in Massachusetts, it's not like that. And where I went anyways, in Plymouth, and also in Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach has more pockets. So you do have more, the nicer area here is going to have a nicer school. You're not, like here, it's more diverse. Mm-hmm. And that's not a bad thing. But it also cannot be a good, sometimes because of that, you have an area a school that even though you're not in that more gang populated area, but because other kids are, they might go to the same school. Mm-hmm. And it does, we can see in Jacksonville, there's some schools, Fleming Island was having a lot of problems the last few years, Green Coast Springs, those high schools, when my kids, because they played sports in high school, we got to go to all these different schools. And I would talk to parents, and it's just amazing. Being diverse is good. But as I was saying earlier, if you're in a community that you're buying a house specifically in this community because it's what you feel is right for your family. Because in America, we can still do that. But because you bought at a younger, your kids were younger, maybe the school system changed, whatever it may be. Because look at all the kids that were going to Fletcher, and then Atlantic Coast opened, and a lot of those kids ended up going to Atlantic Coast. Now Atlantic Coast is having a lot of drug problems. So you have a area that, you think is safe for your family. Every parent gets to decide. You can't come in and tell me how I'm going to raise my kids unless I'm doing something really bad. But I'm not going to do the same to you either. But the school systems, when you have too much diversity and you have such an extreme, and I understand why they did that here, because they want to try to get more of the poor, what you would say, the kids in less economic advances.
Well, like myself,
advantages.
Yeah.
Right. In more of a higher. And you want to combine, like you have Queens Harbor, and then down the road you have HUD housing. Same in Jacksonville for Fletcher High School. Same thing. You have welfare housing just a few, 3 or 4 blocks from Fletcher High School. And then you have kids living in multi-million-dollar homes driving brand new Mustangs or whatever to school. So there's a huge difference. But when you have such a diversity, it can be a negative. And so that's the only thing. And we're seeing that. And if you don't have a school system that's going to put a handle on stuff, this is why, we had that shooting at a football game.
Which one?
I know exactly. That's the sad part. Which one?
Well, I'm not sure if you love South Park. Do you
I don't watch South Park.
Okay. Well, I love. They did, and they're pretty good. They're pretty good at calling out bullshit on the whole politics stuff, or not only the politics, but issues and everything else. They did an episode on that yesterday.
Did they?
It was like the first of the season, and they're really good at not telling people what the episodes are until the day before, or maybe the day of. And this one was about school shootings, and one of the characters' mothers is like crying. It's like, why aren't you guys reacting? Like, this is horrible. This is another shooting. And the husband's like, she's having her period.
Oh my gosh!
But the whole idea was she's being rational. It's like, she's being emotional for a good reason. Like, hey, kids are getting killed. Yeah. And the whole mindset's like, oh, well, it's just normal now.
Well, because
you're overreacting.
And we shouldn't be. We're very pro-guns. Mm-hmm. We believe in our rights to have guns. We're not. I've never met anybody that's been killed by a gun, but I've known plenty of people that have been killed by cars. So if we want to have that debate, we can get into that debate. We should, if we're going to ban guns, we're going to ban cars first. But I think we're safe keeping our guns at this point.
Yeah, my thing
but it's absolutely responsible.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be responsible. When my kids were very little, we taught them, just like with anything. You don't sit there and send your kid into the world and not talk to them about alcohol and driving drunk and texting and driving. You as a parent are responsible. Now, if you are in your home and you do not believe in guns, that's your right. Mm-hmm. And if you allow your child to go to another home and that parent believes in guns and is not responsible, and it's usually parents that are not registering their guns, or there's a lot of, and there are some parents that are just really just dumb. Mm-hmm. But that's with anything. How many people drive cars? I was driving near, oh my gosh, where was it? I had to go near the north side a couple weeks ago for business, and there was a Nassau County sheriff's car. Mm-hmm. Driving through the light near Kings Avenue.
Was his lights and sirens on?
What was it? What?
Lights and sirens, were they on?
No!
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
He had 2 kids in the car. He didn't have a seatbelt on, because I'm at the stoplight. I could clear. One kid was hanging out the back window with no seatbelt on, and the kid in the front had no seatbelt on. He's a police officer. And he's allowing I'm assuming his kids, because the way they were acting, they weren't under arrest. I mean, they were clearly in a car driving, but even the police officer, the sheriff deputy, didn't even have a seatbelt on. And I called my husband. I said, I cannot believe that. I had a great teacher in high school. This is way before I had kids. She had a little kid, and she taught us driver's ed. And she said, how I teach my kids is how you need to teach your kids. I mean, I teach your friends and everybody else. She would pretend that her car wouldn't start because she could see in the rearview mirror or whatever. And if her kids took off the seatbelts or anything, she would stop the car. She would like pull over and stop the car. Oh, you just turned off the car. So her kids believed that just them touching the seatbelt to take it off or not putting it on would stop the vehicle. Mm-hmm. So I did that with my kids, and I really hope and pray that when they're out driving around, they're not being idiots. And that's all I can pray for. But in the end of the day, whatever you do as a parent, they're going to see and they're going to hear. And they are going to behave that way. So if you are acting responsible and going, guns are people choose to have them in their home, but you have way too many kids in Jacksonville. There's a lack of understanding of life. And it's not that I'm a gang, I'm mad at you, or whatever it is. It just like all these shootings in Jacksonville Beach. You have people that literally don't understand the consequences or the understanding of life.
Well, good point.
Because they think that if you don't like something, you kill it.
Yeah, a good point about that is, say what you want about this guy, but I love him and he made good points. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers.
Oh, I love Mr. Rogers.
Well, he's kind of like one of the few Americans you can't talk shit about.
Yeah.
Like, no, he's one of the guys like, no, whoa, leave him alone.
Yeah.
But I think that's something like he was teaching, because he always taught kids. I remember watching, because I had to go back, and they're making a couple of documentaries about him now.
Yeah.
I remember watching him as a child too, and now kind of understood what he was trying to teach. He's taught people or children, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be mad, it's okay to be sad, but use your words. Like, this is why you made me angry.
Yeah.
Or this is why I'm angry. And to go kind of add to that, there's a author I really like. His name is Malcolm Gladwell. He writes these social political and analytical books. It's really well written books. I love his writing. One of his books, I forgot what book he wrote in. I think it's called Outlier, or it might have been in Blink. Well, anyway, he talked about epidemics, and not so much the viral epidemics or health epidemics. He was talking about psychological epidemics, and he talked about suicide. And one of the biggest things he made a point about, which I feel like is kind of like relevant to the whole what's going on with the shootings and stuff, was there was an island in the Caribbean, and the culture was not known for suicide. I think they had 0 suicides in that culture until the first person did it. And then they noticed there was an epidemic of suicides among children.
Oh my gosh.
And I think the conclusion was it was actually a fad. It was a really neuros, is that the word? Like, it was really a deadly fad, of course, but that was only what it was, a fad, because the suicide notes were because they saw this person do it, they did it too. And
look at all these YouTube people, and you get these people for the last 10, 15 years, they do something really stupid on YouTube, and then all of a sudden you have all these likes, you have all these, and then people are sponsoring you and giving you money, and there are YouTubers or Facebook trenders or just basically social media trenders that are making millions of dollars a year to look like a prostitute, to act like a gang member, to whatever. And then what happens when they're on there? Now you have all these other people that are coming and saying, you know what? I don't want to work. Where's my $1 million? Oh, all I have to do is do this nasty thing on TV. What was it? Steve-O or something like that?
Yeah, Jackass. I love Jackass. I love that show.
Well, the problem is, but if you are a teenager, these kids sometimes they're, elementary school, fifth and sixth graders seem so much older nowadays than they did even 10 years ago. And you have a lot of parents that either aren't paying attention or they are working full time and they're not around teaching their kids, this is not how you do things in life. You don't have to go to a 4-year college. Trade schools are an amazing thing, but you have to have something besides a high school education. You have to go see the world. I'll get into that in a minute about my thoughts on that. But you have these kids. All they see is, you turn on the news. I mean, you can look at world news, and there's how many reports within a 2-hour period of somebody doing something, and then like these rappers, they're doing all this crazy stuff, and they're fighting over music. I mean, it's like, seriously? You are throwing a shoe at somebody. I don't remember who did it the other day. I saw that on the news. I was like, at a fashion show, two rapper women were throwing shoes at each other because one is basically they're looking for attention because they know what's going to happen. And one of them they were on the news this morning. One of them got a clothing line now out of it, the deal. Mm-hmm. A week later. So you're rewarding people for bad behavior. When my kids were little, they did something wrong. I didn't give them a cookie. I took something away from them. Okay. And nowadays we have too many parents that are giving the cookie rather than doing something.
I need to ask you something. Yeah. And you can be honest about this, but I will tell you a situation. One of my friends, I was really close to his family. Uh-huh. Well, to his wife now. And I used to work for Disney. I worked for the cruise lines, and I got them I would treat. She has a daughter from a previous relationship, and because he's my best friend and stuff, I would treat them well. And when I was on the cruise ship, I'll send the daughter gifts like the little Disney dresses, and I got them on the cruise ship not for free, but steeply discounted.
Oh my God, that's so much fun!
So like their cruise they're on, I think it cost them. If they did it on their own, around $18,000. I think they only had to pay less than $2,000. Wow! Because she still had to pay taxes, and we had the cruise. Yeah, I forgot what it was called, the dock taxes or some type of tax and
port taxes.
And he still had to pay for the room, but it was steeply discounted. Steeply, I think 90% discount. So her daughter is disrespectful. And at first we thought like, okay, she's growing up, but she would continually do stuff to adults. And she would do stuff to me. I'm like, it was really disrespectful, and I would call her out on it. So I was invited to the kid's birthday party because my best friend was there. I want to hang out with him, but the kids love me. I love playing with the kids. And they had like a big one of those slides, like a water slide. Yeah. And it turned out her baby daddy was there too.
Baby daddy, yeah.
And this guy is crazy. Like I'm not gonna put her business out there like that, but he did something really wrong when she was just like a month old. Like something that he abandoned them.
Oh, okay.
So she comes down the slide and all the kids are playing with me, and then she's constantly sticking her tongue at me, saying bad things to me. She tried to spit on me. And when she tried to spit on me, she had her tongue out and doing that thing with the bubble coming out.
Oh, gross.
I just did that, I'm sorry. But she did that, and she was coming closer to me, and the father was watching. The baby daddy was watching.
Baby daddy.
Yeah, I didn't know he was watching. And I kept telling her multiple times, stop. And she wouldn't do it. She kept coming closer to me.
She's looking for attention.
Yeah, so I just did this. Licked my hand, licked the palm of my hand, and just patted her on her head. It's like, okay, did you like that? Mm-hmm. No, then please don't do that. So what I didn't know at the time was the baby daddy, just to show off or something, or just try to make up for his stupidity, tried to say that he wanted to fight me, that he wanted to beat me up. And I think it was just trying to show off, and I didn't know about that. And I was like, man.
Well, he's ignorant.
Yeah.
He's ignorant. His ability to function in life is pretty low, as it is. Anybody that can sit there and produce a child and look at that child and say, I'm going to leave you. There's an issue with them.
Well, it's also the mother is doing it too. Like, she will let her get away with a lot of things.
Well, and that could be guilt. Was there one or more fathers involved?
Well, my best friend, he's basically the father.
Mm-hmm.
He took over.
How many biological fathers are there for the siblings?
There's one, or one now two because they just had kids.
So there's two. Okay,
yeah.
So mom is making decisions that probably aren't the best for her children, and it could be. And I don't know the situation. Mm-hmm. I don't study psychology.
Yeah, okay.
You do, so you would know better than me. But in circumstances when the kids act that way,
mm-hmm.
they're doing that 100% because they're looking for attention. Kids don't start doing that because they are happy. They're doing that because they're angry about something. If she in the past didn't do that before to you and only did it because her biological father was there?
No, she did it constantly. I know, like on the cruise ship, and this is one thing that because the mother will let her get away with stuff. Mm-hmm. Like we're having dinner, and
there's no discipline.
Yeah, well, when we're having dinner, we have the same two servers for the whole week. Mm-hmm. If you're eating on as a guest.
Yeah.
So you have the same two servers. Even if you go to a different restaurant, they follow you to the restaurant on the schedule. She was throwing like bread on the floor, and the mother was just going to pick it up. And I stopped her like, no, do not. I told the mother, do not pick it up. I didn't yell at her or anything. I just told her stern. I was stern about it. Yeah. Like, listen, these guys are working 5 to 6 months on the ship, 7 days a week. They have families. They've been really nice to you. They've been polite. The guy did magic tricks for you. He remembers your name. He does all this stuff. And what you're doing right now by just throwing food on the floor and making them do more work is disrespectful. Yeah. They're working 12-hour shifts on their feet so that way they can feed their families back in Paraguay, Germany, Ukraine, Philippines, all these countries they're coming from. Italy, yeah.
Well, the officers aren't usually Italian.
The deck officers.
My husband worked for a company, and he was a surveyor for cruise ships back in 2014. So he got to travel and see from Europe to Alaska to the Caribbean and got to really meet.
Yeah.
And the majority, it's like, especially Carnival, all the officers are Italian and all the workers are Filipino. Well, and I don't know why, but he said and the cruises that we've been on, it's the same thing. It's crazy.
It's kind of like we were talking about earlier about the whole the politics thing.
Yeah.
The Philippine government has the Dolphin organization, and they're the ones that kind of like make the contracts with the cruise ships. So most of the time, there's a lot of Filipinos. Nepalese, and a lot of officers are going to be English, Italian, very few Americans. Mm-hmm. And I was there. I was like, I'm not only like one of few, like probably one. I think I was at the time the only American as an officer on the ship, as a deck officer. Uh-huh. And I was like, man, I'm the only brown one too. It's like I'm two minorities right now. I was like, man, I'm two minorities.
But did you have fun?
I have fun. Yeah. I want to work for them again, but that's for. I'll because I'm going to ask you a question about this while I'll do a little bit.
Yeah. But so real quick,
go back to the kid.
So as a kid, that's an issue with non-discipline, and that's the problem that we have in our country now.
Was that also?
You could not get away in Panama, right today. The kids could not. What they do in America.
It's not so much. It's
culture.
It's the culture, but it's also like
you throw money at your kids and shut them up, and that's not the reality.
I know Latino and Hispanics and Italians and also kind of like big on discipline. I think even the Jews too. They
all cultures around the world are very disciplined.
No.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit like.
I got the chocolate. You know what that is? That's
the flip flop. I got the belt and I got punched in the nose.
But, so what I was saying earlier is I truly believe that it should be mandatory. Every American, before they can enter college, is that they have to do 6 months to a year overseas. And I am very conservative when it comes to taxes, but I'm okay with the federal government taking my tax money. And none of these Americanized places. You can go to Dominican Republic and you can stay in an Americanized hotel, or you can stay in the hotel. My mom does a lot of mission trips, and she brought my kids several times to Dominican Republic. And my middle son, he's now 21, cannot ever forget where they stayed at. Right down the street was an open market and cow heads hanging outside. He thought that was the coolest thing ever.
That's in New York too.
Exactly.
in the ethnic neighborhoods.
You have such a melting pot of different cultures, and that's a great thing. But you do have a lot of, so I think it's important that all Americans have got to go from, as soon as they graduate high school, they need to go overseas. When you think you're poor in the United States and you go to a real poor country in another country, you will wake up in reality real quick. In the United States, you're poor, you get a cell phone, you get free food, you get housing, you get an extra, a little cash every month, and whatever else, okay? You're poor in Panama, you beg on the streets. And you're not allowed to just go beg. You have to be selling something to be begging on the streets. So there is no, like in Panama, I don't know how it is in all Latin American countries, but I know in Panama, there isn't what you call a welfare system like we have here. You turn 55, you get Social Security as long as you've worked your entire life. And you do get a very little bit if you haven't. But before that, if you're poor, you go climb that tree and get, coconuts, whatever you can find, mangoes, and you sell them on the street. But you have people working harder because of that. They're growing chickens, they're doing whatever. And in the United States, this is a first world problem, without a doubt, where our kids have too much and they think everybody's supposed to cater to them. And, my kids, as soon as they got a job, they had to pay their car insurance is a luxury. Cell phones are a luxury. No, I didn't have a cell phone and I turned out fine. Oh, my friends, then pay for it. So they would have to take their birthday money, their Christmas money, and they would have to go buy their own and pay their own cell phone bill. Sometimes, they'd have to pay 6 months in advance. But, because as soon as they got that money, that would cover their 6 months or whatever for the cell phone. But absolutely, you have to discipline your kids. If your kid is 17 and you're giving them a $50,000 brand new car to drive around school, you are a bad parent. I don't care what status your child is, what kind of neighborhood your child is living in. They're going to appreciate much better. One thing I can say, I love my parents, and they had money. But they made me and my sister by, 13, 14. This was in the 80s. We could actually go get a job at 12 and 13. I was telemarketing for Electrolux at 12 when I first moved back from Panama. So, yes, that was my first job. And I think I made like $2 an hour. But to me, at 12 years old, I bought my clothes with that. My parents didn't let us get away. If I wanted a vacation, I paid for vacation. We didn't have cell phones back then, but I had a car insurance I had to pay for. My parents, they didn't want a junker in the driveway, so they made me go buy a new car. They went and financed a new car for me, and I had to pay it. But I look back as a parent now, and I realize, God, we're living in this nice neighborhood, so they didn't want a junker in their driveway, and they made me do this. But in the end of the day, my parents didn't teach me finances. But when I started listening to Dave Ramsey, it resonated like, oh my gosh, like I want to be able to do these things.
Yeah, I know for a future episode, because you're talking about, I actually thought about it recently, that I do want to get someone in Jacksonville as a financial advisor.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Because past 2 years have been kind of rough financially for me. One, I racked up credit card debt because I was trying to start my own business. Actually, 2 businesses. The first one failed, but both of them failed. So I'm in debt because of that.
Business is hard.
Yeah, it's really hard.
I think I made like $1,000 a year every year for my clothing business, but I paid probably about $4,000 or $5,000.
You paid too much, even more.
But so business is hard, and that's understandable. But you have to you can still start a business without going into debt. And if you start listening to Dave Ramsey, and he has advisor, what he calls local providers. Basically, these are people that are endorsed. They're endorsed local providers on his website. You can go, and there's financial advisors that you put in your zip code, and it'll send you to an endorsed local provider near you that you can have that conversation with, and they can say, and they have to be on some sort of, either they had to have already graduated from his program or his financial peace program.
And it's not any of this bullshit like how am I going to say this? These are not people that were just like, okay, they graduate from the program and that's it. They don't have any other training.
No. They have to prove themselves. They have to be in the financial peace. A lot of the churches around here have financial peace programs. The military is now getting very active with it. It's called Financial Peace University. That's a Dave Ramsey program and he has a special program just for military. And not to call anybody out, but on the Navy Wives page, they were worried because this month, October, it's going to be a lot longer between the first paycheck for October 1st to the 15th. I think it's 3 weeks rather than 2. And so somebody was warning, and the USO is doing some great things to help military families now. They're doing, twice a month they do free food giveaways, and they have what's called a no-dough dinner, I think once every couple weeks. But it's only for E5 and below. And somebody was saying, well, I'm an E6. We're broke. And I didn't comment, and I wanted to comment, but the thing is, it comes down to finances. An E6 gets $1,700 to $1,800 a month in housing. You're not broke.
That's wait, that's fucking good.
Exactly. You're not broke.
That's freaking amazing. $1,700
That's not including food pay, and that's not including base pay.
How the fuck are they still broke? That's
because they're not managing their money.
I would use half that. That's all.
They're not managing their money. And listen, I made a lot of dumb mistakes as a younger person. Yeah, and I'm always beating my kids up. My oldest son he went to school and he's got some school debt, and he's I'm helping him up, beating him up. You've got to do this. You got to do this, and I'm letting him figure it out, and he's now figuring it out. It's about a year, but it takes a little time. And I don't want to be that helicopter mom and you have to do it this way, because if I continuously do it for him, he's not going to learn. So I had to step back. He screwed up a couple of things, a couple of his bills, and now he's realizing, okay, I've got to go and make things better. So he has a strict plan that he made for us, a budget. It's not our money, it's his money, but at 23, you do what you're doing now at 23. When you're 40, you're not forced to work anymore. You're working because you want to. You can go and change. Perfect example, not to get off the course, but I worked as a vendor, as a merchandiser at a grocery store. I'm not going to say which one. Up until last year, for about 2.5 years. And my mom and my dad, they travel the world. They really do. They're literally, one is in South Dakota at a mission trip right now, and the other one is in Japan for business, and they love it. There were 2 people on my merchandising team for this local grocery store. They're exactly the same. The wife is exactly my mom's age. She's like a couple weeks younger, and the husband is exactly my dad's age. And what I was doing was lifting shelves, moving product all day long. And it would break my heart that because of poor choices, this husband-wife team had owned many different businesses throughout their life. So they really could have been very successful. But they made a lot of stupid mistakes. Financial stupid mistakes and business decisions. And just talking to her, you could tell she was blaming the economy or whatever else. But if you're good, you're going to last. If you know how to manage your money and you have very little debt with your business, even if the stock market crashes today, if you have a product that is good for people or people need, they're always going to need something. And even when the stock market crashes, there's always that person that has money that wants to spend it. So it's just a matter on how you're going to manage your business. And it would break my heart like that. But that was because I had just really started getting into the whole Dave Ramsey thing. And they had just come out with the Every Dollar app. So that was a really good inspiration. Sadly, but it was a good inspiration. I would go to work. excuse me, and I would see this woman who was my mom's age. I'm not going to say my mom would kill me, but she needed knee surgery. But they couldn't afford for her to take off 8 weeks from work in order to have knee surgery. Now, this is a woman in her 70s. She has a college degree. She actually has a college degree in the medical field. I'm not going to say which one. And she was so poor with her decisions in her younger years. It got her to the point where she's making $10, $11 an hour, bending over, lifting heavy things. She's not in a position where she can be doing that in her 70s. And it made me sad, but it also inspired me to say, this is what I want to do. I want to be able to do what my mom and dad are doing. My husband's dad was a successful businessman as well. He was an executive for a big corporation. So he retired young, and he had an entire life of he was able to travel and all that. So we come from that we don't want to just have to worry about Social Security. We want to actually be able to enjoy ourselves. We travel international. We love to do that. I'm dying to see snow. So we were supposed to go to Key West for Christmas last year, but because of hurricane. Because the hurricane, they had to cancel because we stay at the Navy base there. Mm-hmm. And so my husband said, okay, me and my daughter really wanted snow. And so my husband said, okay, we'll go to Tennessee to see some snow for Christmas. So we went for Christmas. Not one ounce of snow.
Yeah, you gotta go a little bit more north.
But when you discipline yourself, you are able to do that. And I have had friends that, their husbands are retired at the same rank as mine, and their husbands are making pretty much what my husband was making when he was still working. And they're like, I'm broke. I'm like, no, you're just managing your money incorrectly. And I've had people say, I'm very passionate when it comes to about Dave Ramsey, and there's a lot of reasons. First of all, I don't want to be broke. I want to be able to enjoy life. I also don't want other people to have to sit here and suffer and not be able to and do anything but worry about, do I have to be on welfare? Do I have to be on Medicaid? Do I have to be on this or that when I retire? Or when, do I have to go to nursing home? Do I have to be a burden to my family? So I care that I don't want other people to have to go through that. So I'm very passionate when I talk about Dave Ramsey. And one thing also is when you have money, like you can see in this economy, people are like, here, can't get rid of the money fast enough because they're making, like, people that were struggling to find jobs 2 years ago are coming back and they're able to buy new cars. And then, when you buy a new car, you have that. But it's a discipline you have in order for it to continue. Mm-hmm. Because people tend to feel better about themselves. A lot of things. Now, there's a lot of negativity in our life, in our world right now, and that's kind of implanted. It's paid by a lot of people that have evil intent against this country, and so they're doing a lot of stuff that shouldn't be happening, but it is. And unfortunately, if you want to go and are we running out of time?
No, because we have this room. To 2:30.
Listen, I talk. So
because I want to.
You can always tell me it's time to go.
We'll talk this for another minute on that, and then we'll start asking the questions.
Yeah, ask the question.
No, because before we transition over, one thing too is also the economy, like wages hasn't matched up to the oh my god, what's that word?
To what the
cost of living.
Cost of living is.
Yeah, wages.
But on that, mm-hmm. You are correct. But what wages are you talking about? Executive wages, people with college degrees?
I don't give a shit about that.
Are you talking about?
I'm talking about
like high school jobs, like McDonald's.
No, I'm not talking about that. Okay, I'm just talking about like someone like me. I have the business. I have my savings, and I was like. The reason why I wanted to start my own business wasn't the idea about getting rich or anything. It's like I want to be independent. Yeah. Because I worked for the government side with law enforcement, and I worked on the corporate side with Disney, and I saw really kind of the bad sides of each, and I realized, especially for someone like me, who someone once told me that, Frank, you have too much of a personality.
That's okay though.
But with someone like me, it's like it felt like it was kind of really constricting, and I'm like, all right, I have money. I'm not married. I don't have any children. So my mindset was, okay, let's do this now, this age, because if it goes wrong, at least it's me. It's just me, and this is I'm young enough age where, yeah, it's going to be tough. Which it is tough going back on your feet. But at least I could bounce back. It's better than doing this when I'm 40 or 50. At least let me find out now. Well, it was like less responsibility. It's a less responsibility.
My husband was forced to. He was that military guy and worked for somebody his entire life. Mm-hmm. He wasn't really a business person. I come from a long line of business owners. So for me, it's always been
I had to learn how to do
And let me tell you, my husband was very okay with me taking care of a business and him having nothing to do with it. He had to do a completely different thing he'd ever done his entire life at 58 years old because of an accident. But you know what? He loves doing what he's doing now. With this business, he would have never thought of starting a business, and he definitely would have never started anything like this, never had the idea of it. So I always joke around, like, it doesn't, like my dad, he was military, but he always had some sort of business. At 60, he started a completely different type of business he had ever had. He's been doing that for, it was less than 60, it was like 55. But he loves it. He's having a good time. He's texting me like, I can't even keep up with his schedule. He's 77 years old. No, I'm not even joking. He texted me yesterday, I'm on the plane to Tokyo. Like, I completely forgot you're going to Tokyo. Because he just came back from Austria a couple weeks, but he loves it.
Yeah.
He's going to die with a smile on his face, either on a plane traveling somewhere or at the computer. He loves it.
Well, like, you talking about like the wages, we were talking about the wages and stuff. Just starting over again, like starting from the bottom again.
It's hard.
It's hard, and then you kind of see maybe more sympathetic towards people. Like, like you see, like it's rough, and I think in 1 year I worked in 4 different industries just to try and find my way. And now I'm finally, I don't want to say the name of the company yet because I'm keeping the podcast.
Don't say the name.
Well, I'm keeping the 2 separate, and I use a alias for me because of that. Well, it's not technically it's not an alias. I just took my middle name, my first name.
Well, don't say that. You're like an alias.
But my last name's like, you guys can't find out that because it's a weird last name. But I worked at. I'll say the name. I worked at Amazon, and I worked at the small business. And my last job before I got this great job, which is actually a good paying job. Finally, finally, I found something that justifies my education, my experience.
But you also have to remember that, not to interrupt you, but up until 2017, and honestly, really until February of 2018, when the tax breaks started, our country was being choked to death with regulations. And I can tell you this in confidence as somebody who not only has a lot of family members with their own businesses in very different type of fields, but I also have, like I said, the bamboo clothing business. And the stuff that we had to do. And I mean, as a company that maybe made $1,000 a year, I was still paying almost 30% of it because of the regulations, and the discounts and the write-offs weren't as good as they should have. It's a very different story. So businesses, if they're choking, they cannot breathe. So they can't. And so you're going to see wages increase now. You're going to see, here, I'll pay for your education and things like that now. So,
well, I don't think that's not necessarily. Well, some companies are like that. It's like, hey, we're struggling too. Right. Like, there's like good examples, like when that crisis happened in 2008. All my good friends worked for Scottrade. Yeah, he worked for Scottrade. No, it wasn't 2008. It was after that. But he worked for Scottrade, and then you saw the leadership. It was actually I admire that leadership. The CEO was like, "Hey, this is what's going on. Our company's taking a hit. No one's getting bonuses. Some of us may have to take pay cuts, but we're not getting bonuses either. We're taking pay cuts also,
right? Because
and you see there are companies like that where you have the leaderships like they're leading from the front.
Yeah,
like they're leading by example. Like we don't want to fire anyone, so this is the deal. We'll all take pay cuts. I'm taking a pay cut too, just to make sure that we all get to eat.
Right. And that's
but then there's
good.
also the opposite companies where they actually have a lot of profits coming in and they're screwing over their workers. Like, no, F you.
Right.
Like, you're just a worker.
Right. And there's a lot of, and you're going to,
and it's like, it's a mixture. It's a mixture.
In anything in life, you're going to have good bosses and you're going to have bad bosses.
Yeah.
You know, and when you work for yourself, you're going to really see that, yes, it sucks that you might be making a great profit this year, but you have a future. You have kids to put in college. Mm-hmm. You have things you have to do for your own household. You can't be giving all these big, huge raises to your because you're the one that's spending 24 hours a day. You know, you have to pay somebody 8 hours, but if you pay them, if they work 9 hours, you got to pay them double time, overtime. You could work 24 hours and get zero. So you're the one with all the
your decisions. I'm never one of those people like, no, if the CEO's making a certain amount of money, fine. Like, as long as he's doing a good job with the company and that kind of stuff,
right?
It justifies the expense. And yeah, he's the leader. He should get the most money. But I'm also talking about too. It's like, don't fuck over the people that helping you move forward.
And and I absolutely agree with that, because that's one thing my husband and I discussed when we started this business last year is when it gets to the point where we can't have our kids as slaves anymore. We have to actually hire somebody and pay somebody. We really have to figure out, because when I had my clothing business, I would hire a couple women locally and I would pay them $2-3 because I would figure out how long it would take me to sew up something in an hour. Mm-hmm. And then I would take that amount and it would come to $20-25 an hour. And you just don't understand that when I was looking for women locally that could sew up 20 or 30 bibs at $2 or $3 a piece, it shouldn't take more than 2 hours to do. So they're making $30 an hour. Guess what? They were either smoking or they did a really bad job, or they would take the items. Oh yeah, I'll have it done next week. 2 weeks later, I'm begging for my stuff back.
And that's why you fired him.
It is. That's the biggest problem is that you, as a business owner, you're also, the employees have to step up. But there's too many people, they want that extra money, but they don't want to work for it. Like, you have people in McDonald's that bust their butt and to go because they want that college scholarship from McDonald's. But then you have a lot of people that work at McDonald's. We were at McDonald's somewhere in Jacksonville a couple of days ago. Mm. It took us like 3 times, hello, and then they looked at it like, what? But my husband and I were afraid to eat the food. We were afraid they were spitting our food.
But that's also a leadership problem too.
Exactly.
So, like,
you're right.
Before we cut this off, it's totally true. The thing is, going back, because there's some things you're talking on and put in, but like I disagree with. But most of the stuff you talked about, I do agree with you with, and like I think that's kind of the biggest thing about business, and I think it's maybe more nuanced. Like, a lot of problems in the country's there's a little more sides to it. But
you have people that have a bad agenda.
Yeah.
They have money, and they're throwing money at people that either don't want to work or can't work. And they're in the mindset, because of how they grew up, of everybody owes me something. So if somebody's saying, you go out there and protest, I'll give you $100 a day. Guess what happens to those people that I have nothing else to do? I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel this country's done nothing but bad things to me. 99% of the time, the country hasn't done anything bad to you. You haven't stepped up to the plate to get the country to do anything for you. Like, I'm a big conservative, like I said earlier, when it comes to finances. I am totally okay with people getting free money to college as long as they are stepping up to the plate. Mm-hmm. If you're giving out money here and there, and these kids aren't, they're taking that money and they're not finishing their classes, or they're, spend the money to send them to another country for 6 months to learn about other cultures and stuff. You don't really have the idea of, I lost my train of thought for a minute, but basically I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them, of our tax money, paying for stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But there's too many people, and I've seen it. I'm a mom of now young adults, but at the time, teenagers. And you just don't understand how many, from poor and from wealthy families, I would see these kids, the parents didn't make them clean their house. They didn't make them, pay their bills.
Yeah, that's kind of...
Oh, they have to have car insurance. No, they don't. They can get on the bus. Oh, well, no. It's whatever. If you can afford to pay for your kid's car insurance, that's good on you. But when your kid has accident, you can't sit there and say, well, why aren't they being responsible? It's because when they have to pay for it out of their pocket every single month to make that payment, to drive that killing machine called the vehicle, they're a lot more careful because they know that money's coming out of their pocket. Whereas if you just hand stuff to your kids, like we discussed earlier, you keep giving them cookies for doing bad stuff, they're never going to appreciate.
Or simply not addressing the issue.
Exactly.
All right, we're going on to the question part because...
You got to get going? Okay.
Yeah, just to let you guys know, actually, this is the same room where I did an episode in with a homeless woman. It was a really funny episode. It was not funny, but yeah, it was humorous in a way. Her behavior and the stuff that led to the episode, the stuff that led after the episode.
Oh gosh.
But this is the same room, so just let you guys know, we had to rent out a room at a public library for this episode, and then also too, I have to go downtown for another interview for another episode today.
Well, you just tell me when to stop. I will keep talking if you don't tell me.
No, it's fine. Now we're just going to go to the question part.
Okay.
For anyone that's a first-time listener, this is still a young show and it's growing, which I'm happy about. I do ask these questions towards the last part of the interview, and these questions are interpersonal questions, which are supposed to show a side of a person that you don't really see on a social setting. You have to actually be intimate with that person, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, mother, daughter, that kind of stuff, that kind of intimacy. So these questions are supposed to kind of bring that out of a person, and the reason why I ask these questions is because a lot of time there's a lot of people on the show that come from different walks of life. I'm trying to get the full spectrum of the human condition, and you're going to disagree with most of the time, you're probably going to disagree with what a lot of people are going to say, but these questions are supposed to show, even if you do disagree with them, you can still relate to that person. Hey, this is still another person. I bet you we got drunk together, we will have a good time. So this is why I ask these questions towards the end of the episode. So here it goes. Given the choice of anyone in the world from any time period, who would you want as a dinner guest and why?
Oh my gosh. I would really have to say, I would definitely like JFK.
JFK. That's the first time I hear that one.
But Ronald Reagan.
Both of them?
Both.
You got both of them.
It's your answer. I would have a dinner party, so you have more than two people. So I would definitely, but I would honestly love to, I like to pick brains of ask questions, and especially people that don't agree with me. I like to have debates. I'm trying to think of who else. There's so many endless possibilities, like Einstein. I would like to have a conversation with him about how he felt as a kid. Because I know because all the reports and documents from when he was younger, he struggled with school and all that. So I would have really loved to have a conversation, because when he was a kid, it was a very different atmosphere in the schools and everything. And being a mom that we talked about earlier with my kids and so many other kids that struggled, I would really like to have I think him and Ronald Reagan would probably be the two top that I would like to talk to.
JFK and Reagan, or Einstein and Reagan?
Well, JFK can come in there too. I have some questions about some things that he was doing. That's really, because I like to know that my dad, like I said, was an intelligence specialist. So I always say, I don't want any money when you die. I don't want anything. I want a list of secrets. He's like, I don't know anything.
Well,
yes, you do.
What I really do want to know if he was actually ever interrogated, or not interrogated, but at least questioned about the relationship.
No, because he was very open. That I do know. I do know. He was very open with everything. And like I was telling you earlier, that they would have to explain where every penny came from and all that. So, yeah. I mean, but I do know as an intelligence specialist, he was actually, they would go check on him.
Yeah.
They do background checks, like what the FBI is doing. That's what they do.
He was scrutinized.
Oh, yeah.
What would constitute a perfect day for you?
Well, there's several. Because I really, my thing is my family. I really love being with my family. I love designing, but I really love the beach and the boat. Like our especially when the kids were younger, now so much nowadays because everybody's all over the place. But we would go out on the boats and we go up the river and we go fishing on the ocean. That's like a total perfect day for me.
Oh, that's nice. All right, here's a good one. If you reached the age of 100 and had a choice of retaining the mind of a 30-year-old or the body for the last 60 years of your life, which one would you want?
I don't know, because I am definitely more educated now at 45 than I was at 30. But I'm pretty physically fit. So that's kind of difficult to say, because I think what I know now, I didn't know when I was 30. I know so much more. So maybe my body. Honestly, I mean, I was not stupid at all at 30, but I was and of course I'm looking at it as how I was at 30. I was so overwhelmed with 3 little kids. Whereas now, but I think that's everybody. As long as you allow yourself to grow, you think so much more. So, I don't know, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Well, it is a tough one because both sides have their pros and cons.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, it's like, say if you're 100 and you had a decrepit body, well, you still have a great focus of your mind. That's great. But if you're 100 and you have a great body, but you're going through Alzheimer's, then there's pros and cons to both of those questions.
Well, my father-in-law, when he was passing away, the last few months before he passed away, his body was falling apart. He didn't act like he was there. He had dementia really bad. But there were certain things that he would say that you knew he was aware of stuff that was going on. And it really made us sad. So I don't know. I don't want to be able to think, but can't do anything.
I think that's just considered hell on earth.
Yeah,
as having
I think
a disease.
So. Yeah.
I feel for the families that have to deal with it. It's just, and the person that going through it. It's terrible. Do you have a secret hunch on the way you will die?
Do I have a what?
A secret hunch on the way you will die.
I'm going to say what my mom has always said all my life. I pray, I go in my sleep. But no, I don't have a secret hunch of how I think I'm going to die. Unfortunately, our life has been surrounded by death in the last few years of young people. My stepson was killed by a car in 2015, and a very dear friend of ours, he was 34, and a very dear friend of ours passed away, was killed in a car accident in June, and he was 18. And so I look at it and I think, that's not really something I want to think about at this time, because even though I'm very open, I've got my life plan. They have these, I want to be cremated. I know exactly, how I want to be cremated. I want my kids to sprinkle my ashes in Panama. And when it comes down to really focusing on that, it's really tough. I mean, if I hadn't had these significant deaths in the last couple of years, I'd probably be able to answer that a little bit better or different. But death has just really hit home for us in the last few years. So that's not something I really even want to think about. God's my creator, and he decides when I go. That's what I believe. So I just hope it's not painful. That's all I care. I don't want to be in pain.
That's the only... Yeah, that's kind of probably the worst part. Is like, I hope I don't die slowly in pain. Like, just make it quick. Well,
and having those 2 young people pass away in car accidents, it does make you think, oh my God, did they feel that? Did they know? You know, one was hit by a car, one was in a car, and for those reasons, I'm a visual person, so when I get visions like that in my head, when I start to think about it, it just really breaks my heart. It really does. There's just something that, it's just something that really, it's just a tough thing.
And yeah, especially when you're dealing with children.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
If you could change anything about the way you were raised, what would it be?
Like what we were talking about earlier, my mom, who I love, and my dad, who I love, one thing I would change was I was a latchkey kid. My mom...
What's that?
A latchkey is where... That's what we called it back in the 80s, in the olden days. But a kid whose parents worked, and they had to come home with the key and open up the door. And, you know, that's one thing I always made sure I was not going to do to my kids. And I've discussed that with my mom. It's no secret. I'm very open. So, you know, for me, I do wish that there would have been more one-on-one time. And there was times in my life growing up that my mom had no choice but to work. And then there were times when she chose to work. And, you know, she did what was right for her. My dad, he was, you know, in the military, and he was busy and going out to sea. And that, I don't regret that. That was good. But I just, you know, in my life, I think, but I made those choices specifically for my kids to be home with them for that reason. I'm not in that big fancy house like I grew up in, but I was able to be there for my kids. And my mom regrets that now. She made sure that whatever she could do to help to make sure that I could stay home with my kids, she did. So they were very generous when my kids were little and helped with private school and stuff like that, because she wanted to make sure that, you know, because she regretted, you know, but for her, she liked to work. You know, she's retired, but she goes back to substitute just every a few months, you know, or well, a few days every few months, because she loves teaching. She loves seeing the kids, and she's in no way in a position where she has to work. She's there because she really, truly loves it. And but she retired 10 years ago, and when for the last 4 or 5 years, even though she's a very active woman, she missed being around the high school kids and stuff. She's a Spanish teacher, so she went back to work and, you know, substituting, not full time. And but she sees a huge difference from 10 years ago to how the kids are now. Big, huge difference. So that's the only thing that I can think of. But I was pretty spoiled.
I was pretty spoiled.
But I want to say spoiled in the way that I had what I needed. I didn't, you know, I knew people as an adult. I've spoken to people, and especially in our homeschooling group, we had such a diverse of people. One girl was from a cult. It was.
Which cult?
Oh, I don't know which cult, but it was a very painful. And she made the choice to leave. Like, she was told to marry older men, and, you know, she left because it was, yes. I mean, she was independent enough to realize this is not the life I want. And she and her sister both escaped. And it was a tough life because you're giving up your mom, you're giving up your dad, everything that you know. But, so I talked to a lot of different women in all aspects. And so it doesn't matter if you're poor or you're rich, there's always something that we come from, that there's something that we didn't like or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Nobody's parents are going to be perfect, but as long as they're good parents, it's like there's a standard.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, as long as you're above that standard, you're good.
Well, my kids were teenagers, and I still tell them now, I said, if there's anything that you don't like what I'm saying, I'll pay for either you'll how do I put it? I say, either you'll appreciate it in 10 years or I'll pay for your therapy when you're 30.
Well, you gotta wait to 10 years. Okay. If you wake up tomorrow and gain any power or ability, what would it be and why? That's kind of like a fun question. Like a superpower, anything like that.
A superpower. You know what? Definitely, I want the ability for everybody to think for themselves. Mm-hmm. Because when you have the ability to think for yourselves, then people cannot overcome you. You have that ability, and I'm seeing it less and less, where people are not able to really say, this is what I think. This is what I want. They're okay, well, this is what the government says, this is what my neighbor says, this is what I have to do. And the newer generations are getting this idea that we have to be robots, and we're not robots. And so I really, because I guess the confidence in yourself is really what I'm saying, because when you're confident in yourself, you love yourself, and you know that you can do it, you're going to accomplish 1,000 times more. And if you don't feel good about yourself, you're not going to accomplish much at all. So it's definitely a confidence in yourself. Everybody would have it, because I want everybody to succeed. I want, there's always going to be a different level. Like I always tell people that God blesses everybody, but what you do with that blessing is going to decipher whether you make it in life or break it in life. And that's the superpower that I wish that everybody would have the confidence. In the end of the day, nobody's equal. We're all going to have something that somebody's better at than us. And if we have confidence, we're building other people up, and then they're building us up. We're not tearing each other down.
And also, kind of like add on to that, something I have to still kind of like remind myself is that you're also you are responsible for your failures and mistakes, but you're also not those failures and mistakes at the same time. Like you can move on and grow, be better from that. You can use that stuff like, okay, good example with the debt in the business. Like I made mistakes with the business, I made mistakes with debt. How can I use the lessons? Yeah, there are lessons here, and it should be used wisely.
In business, if you don't have confidence, forget it. You know how many times you have somebody that says they don't like your stuff? I mean, especially when I would sell at the green market here at the beach, my bamboo stuff, I would, every Saturday when I was there, I'd have some, I can make that better than you. Oh, that's nice.
But they don't.
You know what? They're more than welcome to go get the materials. That's a big thing that, we have a laser. It's a huge, very expensive piece of equipment. And I had somebody recently say, I can make that. I'm like, you have a laser? Well, no, I can, cut it out with a knife. I'm like, listen, go for it. You're not my customer anyway, so I don't care. But that's a big problem.
That is a big problem. Okay. Because we talked about this before we started. What conspiracy theories do you believe in? Because you said you had a boyfriend that...
Oh, that's right. Okay, well, that was not really conspiracy theory. He's Edgar Casey.
Yeah, I didn't know who that was.
Edgar Casey, I think his name is. He actually has a museum type of thing in Virginia Beach. And my high school boyfriend, he got into that. And he believed in the whole, when you put yourself to sleep, you rise above and you can see yourself.
Out-of-body experience?
Yeah, out-of-body experience. Similar to what you were saying, something about shadow people. And that's what made me think of it.
Shadow people.
I don't necessarily believe that. I do, the conspiracies that I do, having a dad that was an intelligence specialist. My husband actually was in Egypt before the revolution. Thank God they had the revolution. And I see what our government was doing to Egypt to punish them, because over 30 million Egyptians decided they weren't accepting.
They wanted to do their own thing.
The government that was in place was really bad. And our government at the time, in 2013, punished Egypt. That's not a conspiracy. It's the truth. It's the fact. But a lot of people don't understand where the money goes. Like the biggest conspiracy is, I guess it would be like the George Soros thing. Not to talk politics, but every time something major happens, him and Muslim Brotherhood, hands are in the cookie jar. Why would a group that is very anti-Westerners and anti-American throw so much money into groups that are purposely going and harming America? Think about that. I don't know if that's necessarily conspiracy theory, but a lot of people are like, oh no, that would never happen. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, there's a lot Could be a global elitist thing, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's without a doubt.
They don't
They want one world power when it's public record that of how much was given to certain groups that are causing all these riots and everything else. It's public record. Look who gives them the money. You can go back and see it is the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood was kicked out of Egypt in 2013 because a Muslim country said, you're too tough. You're way out there for us. Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to have over 30 million people protest to get your ass out of here. That's how bad you are, okay?
Well, I remember it was also like, that was one of the rare times in that situation where the military actually held its ground. It's like, we're doing this for the people. If I remember that correctly. Yeah, they were supporting the people.
Yes, because the people went to Assisi, who was the new president, but at the time was just the general. Mm-hmm. And my husband became a contractor and went there in May of 2013. I was supposed to move there, but I didn't know that, a month later he was coming back. But in Cairo, they were already pushing for women to lose their rights for driving, for Sharia law. These are things that Americans, honestly, are spoiled. This is a first world problem. When you have electricity 5 minutes here, but then you don't have electricity for another 2 days. And my husband was living in a very nice American. He was living directly across from the British Embassy in Egypt, a very nice Americanized apartment building. And I had to send him those big camping water bottles because their water was shut off all the time. Their electricity was shut off all the time. He was there for a month and a half. He's like, oh my gosh. He says, I like Egypt. He says, but this no water and no electricity thing is getting to me. But it had nothing to do how the country is. It was who was in charge of the country. They were not taking care of what they needed to do. Mm-hmm. And so when you're in power because you love your country, you don't put your thumb on everybody. When you're in power because you don't feel good about yourself. And dictators, actually, it's because they don't feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
You as a psychologist...
Well, I'm not a psychologist, but...
you study psychology. You know that it really does come down to how you feel about yourself. It's not necessarily conspiracy, but it really is because when Netanyahu from Israel came to visit the UN, Congress, our Senate, our president at the time didn't go to see him and have lunch with Muslim Brotherhood. This was about a year after Egyptian people kicked the Muslim Brotherhood out. That is a conspiracy because they were infiltrating into our country more than people realize. I don't care what religion you are, it has nothing to do whether they're Muslim or they're cray-cray. I don't care what you are. But if you are purposely trying to harm other people in order to take control, it's like a prisoner. It's like a slave owner. Slave owners didn't hire people because of free labor and all that. Well, they did, but they also hired people. Did that because that was their way to control. They didn't, why would they beat the slaves? The slaves didn't want to be there. They beat them. They tortured them. They hurt them. Why did they do that? So they can keep control. If they said, hey, you want to stay? The people were like, hell no. They weren't nice. There are historical facts that there were some, they weren't necessarily slaves, but they weren't paid. So technically they are a slave, but they had quote unquote nice masters. So they weren't getting beaten and threatened and all that. They tended to be loyal to their owners, which is, it's very crazy to think that. But you had too many. Slavery is not good no matter what. But you had too many of them that were very cruel. And they were harming and they were hurting and they were raping and they were doing all these things. So it's just a item of control. Like if you beat your child every day, they're not going to learn in a way that you want them to it comes back to the free thinking. They have to be able to be a free thinker. Employees, hopefully no more slaves, but in Middle East, they have a lot of slaves still, in Asia as well. But you have, and just like employees, if you have a boss that is a jerk, it doesn't matter if you're making $40 an hour.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah, we're getting pretty close. Okay. So I'm going to skip to the last question because it was a good episode.
Cut me off. Just cut me off. I know I talk. I have a lot of opinions.
Yeah, this is the not the episode. This is the question I ask everyone, and I save it for the last one. What's the worst thing you have ever done, and also what's the best thing you have ever done in your life?
Well, the best thing without a doubt is my kids. I mean, I love my kids. They're everything. The worst thing I have done, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. So I wasn't going out there partying, but that's just who I am. It wasn't because I couldn't. I just chose not to. I don't know. I'm not innocent, but I've never gone to jail. I've never
gone to jail.
No. I
was never caught.
No. I have, my moral compass is pretty high. I'm pretty stickler when it comes to certain things, and how, God is my creator, Jesus Christ is my savior, and I honestly, truly believe that, they see everything. And I want to do good for this world because I'm a happy person. I've been very blessed in life. There are days when I don't necessarily feel that, but for that reason, I'm always trying to better myself, better other people. I can honestly say I don't know of anything, and maybe there might be somebody out there, and if I ever get into politics, they'll throw it out there. I don't know, but I cannot think of, I have never purposely gone to hurt somebody. I've never purposely gone to steal from somebody, any of that.
Nothing you ever felt guilty about, or nothing?
No. I mean, okay. As a mom, I'm going to tell you right now. There are guilt things, like I wish, oh my God, did I do this right? Did I homeschool? Should I put the kids in public school? I mean, forget it. When you're talking about mom things, forget it. All moms have guilt. Doesn't matter what they do, there is something. But in the end of the day, I was a damn good mom. I still am. I have, they're still here. They still need help. And, I brought my son to a doctor this morning, and because he was in a car accident and he can drive, but I want to make sure I'm there for him, so yeah, no,
All right, good.
There might be somebody out there who says, oh, she did me wrong, but I don't know.
No, you don't seem like that type of person. We all make mistakes. Maybe you probably did something wrong. You didn't realize you did something wrong, something like that. Yeah. But no, you don't.
God is the only one to judge me. So when I die, I'll hear about it.
All right, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. It wasn't as bad as I thought.
Yeah, it wasn't. Usually I'll let you keep talking, but like I said, I have to go downtown and do another episode.
I gotta get back to work.
And you gotta get back to work.
I gotta get back to work.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for listening. Check out the website is ataboolife.com, where you can read interesting articles, episodes of the podcast. And I hope you guys have a great week, or a great weekend too, because today's Thursday, so tomorrow's Friday. and that is always a good thing. You guys have a great week, and thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you.